Yeah, the beauty of a circle is no one's in the back row. There's nothing I love more than watching a person jump off a cliff because they know they can fly. We don't see ourselves clearly because we see ourselves through the filters of our experiences and whether they worked out or not. My favorite question to ask a friend or a family member or anybody, instead of asking, how are you, ask them, how's your heart?
Hello and welcome to the Unlock Lab. I'm so glad you're here. I'm your host, Tosca DiMatteo, and I'm super thrilled to be here with you today with an amazing friend and guest, Deb D, the founder of Big Life Magic. Now, we're going to talk today about how community supports inner critic work, because y'all know, if you've tuned in once or twice, that this is something I'm really passionate about that I think breaks through how we're holding ourselves back. But I have a feeling this conversation is going to go deep into what is community and why do we need it and all the good stuff. Before I go any further, if you're new to the podcast, let me just briefly introduce myself. I'm Tosca DiMatteo, and I'm the founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and I do work around transformation. So whether you are looking to break through your own stuff and get to the other side for personal and career breakthroughs, whether you're looking for content for your event to inspire your audiences and help them to get to the next level of who they're being and how they show up, that's the work that I do. So if you want to learn more, visit coachtosca.com. That's coach, TOSCA.com. All right, jumping right in to community and to Deb. First, I'm going to give a brief intro to Deb D here, and then pass it off for her to kind of fill in the blanks. But I've known Deb for many years. She's a dear friend of mine. And the core of who Deb is somebody that just is all heart, all heart. She just loves so deeply and so broadly. And she's been through her own career transformation, multiple personal transformations. And I think that's why I'm so inspired and so connected to Deb, because she knows what it means to get in there, get dirty, and do the work, because she believes that there's more that's possible, not just for her, but for the world, and especially for women. And I do want to preface this. We may be talking a lot about women, but you know that this always applies to everybody. Community and transformation applies so broadly. And the other thing about Deb's magic is her just amazing ability to hold space for others, which is why I chose her to talk to us about community, because she's so effing good at it, and is so spiritually developed and evolved and has so many tools in her toolbox. And I've used so many of them in the work that I do. So I'm just thrilled for you to get right to the source of some of the things that I talk to you about, because some of them have gotten their way through because of Deb. So without further ado, Deb, thank you so much for saying yes to being here, to being on this platform. You've so kindly had me on your platform. And so I just love that we get to deepen the collaboration of work that we do together. And I'll pass it over to you to fill in the blank of, oh my gosh, I'm thinking you're like a global citizen. You've been all over the world. Like I missed that, but there's so much that I missed. But I'll just pass it over to you to fill in what you hope the audience, learns about you today.
Thank you. It's always this strange, like exciting, kind of awkward moment when someone else is talking about you and you're in the space, because it's like, can we be present with ourselves, with how others see us? So I want to say thank you for like literally leading with heart and saying, that I have a big heart, because I claim it. I do. And I've worked on alchemizing my heart, and it is a really important part of the work that I do. So thank you for leading with my heart And I'm going to continue to do that as we have this conversation. So for those who are new to me, g'day, I'm Deb D. And yeah, as Tosca shared, I'm the founder of Big Life Magic, and I'm many other things, like I think we all are. But essentially, Big Life Magic to me is the transformation of my own process, my own, not process so much, my life experiences that led me to different avenues that I didn't realize I was going to explore in this life. And the big question that I have often is, how can we transform from a big life loss to a big life magic? So a huge part of my work has been in grief transformation, which means it's all about the heart. It's all about how your heart is. But the other thing to know about you is that I'm really witchy. I love hanging out in the woo. I'm all about it, but I'm also about practical magic, which is that how do we take the woo and add the how-to? How can it mean something for everybody so that we can all choose our spiritual practice? And there's lots of different ways that turns up in the Big Life Magic world. And one of those ways is the community, which is, going to be at the heart of our conversation today.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much other stuff I want folks to know. But, we will share all the ways that people get in touch with you for sure in the show notes and all the good things, because obviously the depths are multitudes of our experiences. First of all, I'd love to just start by defining what we mean by community. Because I come from a world of, networking and not necessarily the term community. So I'd love to just make sure we're like, hey, we're on the same page. What does it mean? How do we define it? How is it differentiated? And also, just in response to your introduction, I also just want to share that, the work of what you're saying, the woo, right? Which the way that I kind of look at that is spiritual development, the inner work, the getting closer to your own truth and your unapologetic living from that place. And it's so part and parcel to the work that I do. And I don't necessarily share it in all those ways, right? But for those listening, to do this work of transformation, to do this work of holding space for others, being really clear in yourself, I think, is really important, so that you're not projecting, so that you know what's yours and what's not yours, so that you can let things go. And so I thought it was just a great opportunity to say, let's just be clear. When we're up leveling, this is part of it, And what I love about you, Deb, is that you are so grounded in it. And it's not about oh my gosh, kumbaya, and all the things,
Yeah.
all the bypassing that happens right now. That's not you. You wouldn't be on here if it was, So I just want to say, if you're listening, which you are, because you're hearing me right now, just know that this work is so interconnected. The work that Deb does, that I do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, for a long time, Tosca, I was really in the shadows with who I am and what I can offer, because of the fear of people are not going to understand me, not going to take me seriously. But really, for the big changes, transformations, times when things have been really tricky and I've had to find myself through terrain to another side, it's been my spiritual practice that has been my anchor. And that's not, let's go up onto the mountain and light some sage and start chanting. It's actually not about that for me. It's about creating a place where all of you is available to you, not just your mind, not just your feelings, but all parts of you. That for me, what it is. And I work with a lot of people who, when they first meet me, they tell me that they have this experience of feeling like they're not in the club. Like that there's some people who are spiritual, or that they, identify as connected to the universe or having magic, or whatever words you want to use for it. And there are some people who have felt like they've not been allowed in, or they've never been invited in. Like when I hear that makes me really sad, because we all have our own spiritual practice. Spiritual practice is deeply personal.
Yeah.
It's deeply personal, but inviting back this idea of like, yeah, let's start here. Like, what is community? Like, community really, for me, if you want to just go to the bare bones definition of it, I think community is defined by people or place. So it's the gathering together of a group of people who are either connected because of who they are, what they're interested in, or where they are. Because like when I reflect on it, I've been connected to many communities in my life, and some of them weren't necessarily my choice. I grew up Catholic. I grew up going to backyard birthday parties and barbecues that were all connected in the Catholic community, because that's who my mum and dad hang out with on the weekends when I was the little girl. So being a member of the Catholic community was a part of my upbringing. And at the time, I didn't see it as the Catholic community because that didn't mean anything to me as a young girl. I saw it as the families that we all hung out with on the weekends, and we also tended to see them at church on a Sunday. But to my mum and dad, the Catholic community was like a huge part of our family. Like that's who we would socialize with, and then there's other communities where you get to choose if you want to be a member of that community. Like whether it's the place where you live has a sense of community or not, whether it's something that you're interested in, that you join a community because you have a similar interest. So I think there's many different ways that we're either invited into or just by default are in communities.
I love that you share that, right? Sometimes we're by default in communities, and how important it is to really assess and ask ourselves, is this community serving me? Am I here just because I've always been here, or now it's just part of my fabric, but actually it stopped serving me, or it's not my vibration anymore, or they're just not my people. Such a big part of what I talk about is just awareness of what are you doing? How are you living? What are the choices you're making? What are the patterns that you're in? And so, yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes we're around people because it's become comfortable, even if it's not actually working for us. And it makes me ask a very practical question about it too, right? Which is like, is there a number? Like, is two a community? Is it more than that? Like, how do you see it in terms of a pack or a tribe, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea of community is the bringing together of many, whatever that number is. But I think, 3 women hanging out together, is that a community? Well, that's a community. Well, that's gang maybe, but also like, I think really the idea of community being different than a group of is also that communities have like a sense of, why are they gathering together? Like, what is the purpose of this gathering? Why do they come together? What is the thread? What is the intention? Particularly for intentional communities like the one that I have at Big Life Magic Makers or other communities that I'm in, you can feel that we are all together for this reason. There's a clear sense of coming together.
And I think a part of it is, it doesn't have to be, or it doesn't necessarily have to be so stated, but I think ritual is also a part of community in a way, especially when there is intent right behind the community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes those rituals naturally develop in communities, and sometimes they are, placed by either the leader or the purpose of why this community is coming together. But when communities do come together and they meet more than once, you would naturally create, how does this community relate to each other, communicate? Like, what are the rules? What are the rules of engagement,
Right.
I think that is something that does over time get defined in communities, but it's also something that the person or the people who have created the community or opened the space for this community, it's one of the considerations, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what creates a sense of psychological safety, of all the things of connection, of belonging, because you kind of have a sense of what to expect, or or there is that scaffolding, that structure to say, this is how we gather here. And so you don't have to, you're not coming in like, what's going to happen this time, which can create, right, constriction and tension, as opposed to like, I know how this works. I get it. And I can easily jump in, and it's not going to be this big, what am I going to get today?
And when we know how it works, we're able to be in it.
Yeah.
Like rather than, go like we've all had the experience where you go to a new place or you join a new group and you're not sure what's going to happen. Like you might be excited to connect with other people, but you're also going to have a huge part of you that's kind of like on guard. Like, am I going to be asked to do something I'm not expected to do? Am I going to be exposed in some way? Am I going to be actually included? Am I allowed here? Like there's a whole heap of different thoughts and feelings that come.
Yeah.
Particularly for people who are joining new communities.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of, are you familiar with the work of Priya Parker and the Art of Gathering?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes me think of, one of her big concepts, right? Which is the gathering starts before the gathering begins.
Yeah.
And how important that is to let people know what to expect, to set the stage, especially if you're doing something outside of cultural norms, and to say, this is how, this is what's welcome here, and like, this is what's not.
Absolutely. Like I just yesterday sent the first official email to 3 women who are coming here. I live on the island of Tobago, everybody. I'm privileged to live deep in the Caribbean. And next month, I have 3 women who are coming for an immersive elite retreat experience. But for them, the retreat's already begun because they've said yes. So they're already working their way towards it. Whereas we're now a month out, month and a bit of them out from landing on the island. So I sent them the first group email with and this is what we'll be doing, and this is what we'll be eating. And some of them knew that, some of them didn't, some of them didn't even really need to. But that same idea of supporting people in the entry, supporting people to understand, what is the purpose of this gathering?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen there?
Yeah. And what I love about this conversation is this totally applies to teams and workplaces, and when you're and anytime you're gathering, anytime you're bringing people together with a common purpose, right? Like that if you think of it as community, if you think of it as holding sacred space, as you think of it as something special, because these people will never gather again in this way, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That we would take more care for it and be more intentional. So if you're listening, just remember that this applies in so many ways in our lives about how we gather and how we create intention with what we're doing.
You've just reminded me of a story, Tosca. So I'll just share this little story. So before living in the Caribbean, before living in New York, before that, I was living in Australia, and I ran a consultancy with 2 other amazing women called Red Thread Stories. And what we did as a consultancy is we worked with teams and communities on connecting them through their stories, the narratives and the themes in their stories. And that worked, that was a lot of different ways that we did that. But I have this really clear memory that popped in. One day we were doing a team training day for a really diverse team, and they were all working for a disability service. And so some of them were working more like one-on-one with the people, some of them were in the management, but the whole team, the whole management and all of the frontline workers of this team had all come together from this organization to work with us on a whole day around just team development, understanding each other, connecting through stories. And as the 3 facilitators, we went to the workshop space early, like we always did that, because we had that sense of setting the space, aligning the 3 of us before we facilitated together. And we would always facilitate in circles. So we took all those plastic chairs in that random conference room and we put them all in a big circle so that when everyone came, they could see that this is where we're going to gather. This is how we're going to begin. Everyone's going to sit in a chair in a circle. And as they all start to kind of file in, I hear one guy say to his work colleague, "Oh, God, it's a circle. Like, and I heard it, and so I kind of looked up to him, and he kind of realized he was like busted, right? And I was like, I don't want this to be his first experience of walking in. Like, obviously, there's something about group processes or being on this team day that's like he's already not on board, right? And so I looked at him, and I kind of like, he noticed that he'd been busted by me, one of the facilitators. And I said, yeah, the beauty of a circle is no one's in the back row. And he just kind of stopped and took a breath. And it was this moment for him of like, oh, okay. Like there's a reason behind this. It's not anything other than everyone's included. No one's in the front row, no one's in the back row, which is why we used to always facilitate in circles. And that's what the community that I run now, the Big Life Magic Makers, we call our gatherings circles. Because this idea of like everybody can be seen in the circle. There is no front row or back row. And also you can't hide. You can't hide.
Right. I know. I love that. And to me, there's something about that a circle feels to me like a sacred space, and that what happens here is respected and it stays here, as opposed to just being in rows where it's just like, where's the boundary, you know?
Yeah.
So that was juicy. I love, thank you for sharing that story. And you know, it kind of brings me to this question of like, obviously you're super passionate, right? You're super intentional. You have so many tools that you use in holding, and you also train other people how to do it, because there are the people in your community also hold the space and host things and all that. So I'm really curious about origin stuff, right? Like why is community such a big part of what you care about, what you do in the world, and why do you love it so much? Like, I just love to hear some of those early beginnings of this core work that you do.
Yes, such fun. Let's play there. Because it started with play. You know, I am the middle child of 7, and a family that we would hang out together a lot. Like my sisters were my playmates, as well as my friends from school and in the Catholic community. And so I grew up in a gang. And I also had a family that was the family home that other friends would want to come to, because it was always a good, open, welcoming vibe. So there was always a lot of people around. And so I got that's how I grew up, like being one of the many, you know, and I have really clear memories of my younger sisters being invited / forced by me to come into my play and imagination. And in that play and imagination, I was always the teacher, or I was always the person leading, like gathering people together for a purpose, right? Like when I was little, I didn't know you could be a community activator. Like to me, I saw teachers at school, or, you know, the priest standing in front of the congregation at church. So that's what I started to mirror. But this idea of gathering people together and sharing experience, I naturally did this as a kid. And I was lucky because I had my sisters around who said, okay, Deb, we'll play.
Yes, oh my God. I love this so much, right? Because a big part of the work that I do is supporting people in figuring out what's next. And like they might feel stuck or they don't know what they want to do next, right? And you know, they've had one career or 2 careers and they're just not fulfilled. And what I love about what you're sharing is like we have so many puzzle pieces of our lives. And sometimes we forget the value of going way, way back before we started getting jaded, before we started playing by all the rules and whatever, to say, you know, because this goes so far back for you. And I'm not saying everybody has that, right? That connection with their purpose from their childhood, but that there's so much information when we look at who we were right before all the things happened to us. So thank you for sharing that. What a beautiful story.
The other part that is definitely a huge thread here in the tapestry of what I bring forward is when I moved from, you know, high school living with my family into university, I studied theatre. So I'm a theatre kid. and I knew this before leaving high school. Like I knew that I was interested in people and their stories as opposed to like maths and science, even though I could do that. It wasn't that, I wasn't interested in it or my brain didn't go that way. It was like I had more of an interest in people and their stories, which led me to studying theatre. But when I studied theatre at university, I wasn't studying to become an actor or a director. I studied community theatre. Like, what does it mean to use to use theatre practices within communities? How can theatre practices be educational? How can theatre practices bring people together? So the term used now is applied theatre. Back in the day when I was at university, it was called community theatre. And so it's this idea of using theatre-based practices and applications in communities or teams or organisations, which is what led me to the work that I did all through my 20s and into my 30s, which was using theatre forms, theatre practices to bring people together for a purpose. And sometimes that was community-based in like one example is for years I ran a community arts program in a small town that was not connected to anything. And they didn't really have a community identity. So I worked with the youth and some circus trainers. Literally, we created a community circus. Such fun. But then also this work with Red Thread Stories, where we would work with different organizations in actually bringing them together through their stories. And so when you work deeply in, applied theatre and community theatre practices, you are always thinking about the ensemble. You're always thinking about how people gather and the common threads of those stories. And it's literally in what you do, in like, how do we begin? What happens next? Like, so it's so in me now from those years and years and years of these different theatre practices and 20 plus years as an applied theatre practitioner in playback theatre, a very particular type of theatre form where it's about connecting people with their stories. So like from like my early adult way into my 30s, I was deep in how do we bring people together and how do we connect people in a way that feels good.
I love you have such a strong thread, right? Like of the work that you do. And it's funny because personally, I grew up with I spent a lot of time with a big Italian family on my Italian side, and so that was my experience, right? In terms of, big groups, kind of a little chaotic, right? Food at the core of it all. But yet it definitely was a place of belonging, right? It was definitely a part of my identity, but it wasn't necessarily a place for necessarily emotional support or getting to the next level. It's not like it was a community where like my family or, my, relatives were like, tell me what's going on with you. And like, it wasn't that, right? So, and then combine that with like just being, raised with a very strong sense of rugged individualism and do it on your own. Community also has felt very elusive for a lot of my life. I thought I had it. I had people, I had group, right? I had a sense of where I came from and the culture. But in terms of, well, what can community really do for you? Like, what's the point? Because it feels like, well, it's vulnerable to be with people and to actually express yourself and to actually have a space where you're doing your processing, where you're doing your growth work, right? Where you're figuring out more deeply who you are. Like that, I think it really wasn't until I met you. Maybe I had a little bit of experience with it, but I'm kind of rambling here, but my point being like, for folks who are just like, well, I don't know what this actually is. I don't know what it feels like. Like, what do you think the benefit is of being in a community, even if you have places where you do belong, even if you have places that feel like home or that you can be yourself? what's the benefit of like choosing an intentional community as part of the work of personal and professional breakthrough goals?
Mm. I just want to first say I hear you in the community hasn't always been a natural pulse, because I think that's true for so many people. And there's also communities that we are in, whether it's by choice or default, they don't always feel good.
Mm.
Community can also be the place where you're very aware of feeling alone in the group, which, is a universal, let's get really lonely. Like that feels really, intensely crushing for some people. And not everyone is like me, where I was like, I grew up as the middle kid and the sisters who would play with me, and I was the theatre kid, playing the icebreaker games. Like not everyone naturally moves towards that. So community can be really confronting. It can be a scary thing, like not welcoming.
Yeah.
But to answer your question around why, there's so many personal benefits when you can be in a community that actually is an intentional community that welcomes you. So I want to make it clear, I don't think this happens in all communities. But if you are in a community that has welcomed you, that you feel like you have a place here, then what you have is you've ticked one of those boxes that the human is always seeking to tick, which is, do I belong? Like having a sense of belonging. Because when we are like at our cellular or spiritual, whatever you want to call it, like deep down, we want to be in a gang because it's safer. There's safety in numbers. We want to know that we're accepted as we are, in light of all the differences in the world. Do I belong? It's one of the fundamental questions that we're asking ourselves all the time, which is why when you do have a community that you belong to, it can be really powerful because it supports you to anchor into who you are. And if you want to transform parts of who you are, you need to know who you are. And then you need to feel safe in that to be able to then move to these uncomfortable, outside of my normal zone moves that you make, which happen in transformation. Now, you can definitely do transformation one-on-one on your own. Like I do a lot of work with people, and it's one-on-one private work with me, and they're not in the community. And for them, that's their safe place because of the vulnerabilities or what they're processing. Because some people are just clearly like, I'm not a community person. I'm like, all right, so let's go a different way. But for some people, being able to be in a place where I am accepted for who I am, I can turn up however I am, whatever the day is bringing, just that first beat is the foundation to the potential of transformation for others. Because what you find when you're in that community is you can find these extremes that we need. And one extreme is, oh, me too. Oh, I'm not the only one. It's like, oh, this is a thought and a feeling that these other women are having also. Like it's not just me. And then you get this other extreme where somebody else in the community may have a very different experience. And you can see the extreme of difference. You can see the extreme of maybe what you haven't thought of yet. Or you can witness somebody else really stepping into a transformation or stepping out of their comfort zone. And it can be inspiration for you. So you get these, you get both, I think. That sense of like, oh yeah, it's not just me. We're all in this.
Yeah.
Other people have experienced this too. And that inspiration, like there's nothing I love more than watching a person jump off a cliff because they know they can fly.
Yes. Oh my God, there's so many things I want to say at the same time. So I'm going to try to parse it out real quick. The first thing is that for those, I don't think most people don't know this, but actually the concept of the Unlock Lab started as in-person group conversations. And I learned so much about the power of holding space for the wisdom of the group to come out.
Mm-hmm.
I put all this pressure on myself, like I have to provide all this content, and like, no, I don't. I ignite it, and then the group has the conversation, and so I bring that up because what you're saying about the validation of community being places for validation, it is so healing in and of itself to know that you're not alone. And we're living in a world where loneliness is an epidemic.
Yeah.
Right? And there are ways to come out of that. There are ways to feel like and know that you're not alone, and your community is just one example of that. The other thing that, right, as you're sharing, look at all these benefits. There's all this stuff, right? There's inspiration and there's transformation. And there's and I think the same thing about the work that I do, right? Like, oh my gosh, when you get to work with a coach, when you get to, have a facilitated conversation like the Unlock Lab, but it makes me wonder, like, what do you think are the key obstacles or number one key obstacle for people to say yes to this? Because it seems so, right? Like, duh, why wouldn't anybody want this? But what do you think holds people back from saying, yes, I want to join the Big Life Magic Maker community and feel held and find a space that I can call my own, and all that you shared about what the benefits are?
Yeah. And I think I'm going to speak for the Big Life Magic Makers, the community for women, but I think this is going to apply to other communities too. And I think one of the obstacles is the experience that some people still have living in their muscle of being in a group where they didn't feel like they belonged and not wanting to reactivate that feeling again. And so just deciding that community is not for them. They don't belong in the group. They're just going to stay where it's safe. And I don't deny that. That can be really deeply painful for some people. Some people get locked in their head too. Are these my people? Will I be accepted here? Which then kind of gets translated into what exactly are you going to be doing? Am I going to be asked to answer a question I'm not ready to answer? Or are we going to be doing something I may not feel comfortable with? And that's just a way of people creating an obstacle for themselves. All of those little like what ifs, I don't know, give me more detail. That's just the treading of water because I'm not feeling safe.
Yeah.
Right?
This is like, oh, sorry, we're going to say something else?
Yeah, no, you go, yeah.
No, I'm just like, this is a perfect actually way into the inner critic conversation that was part of the intention of today, because we carry our baggage with us. We think the past experience will dictate our future experience. And so the fear mindsets, the inner critics that are trying to keep us safe from, well, you don't want to go there and then be rejected. And it also connects not just to the inner critic piece, but also to this idea of we get to experiment. We're so afraid to say yes and then have it be the wrong thing, as opposed to let me just say yes and just give it a try. And you know what? If I join this thing for a month or two, or I come to whatever, and it's not my bag, great. It's not like it's just I'm trying. And I think that's part of transformation, right? Is trying something new to get different results. But we hold ourselves back because we think that next decision has to be the absolute perfect right decision, as opposed to just putting on a lab coat and saying, literally why I call this the Unlock Lab, and saying, let me just try something.
Yeah, experiment. Yeah.
It's no different than trying to find a therapist or finding a coach and saying, I know I need support, or I know I need community. Let me jump into this circle and see if it fits. And you know what? If not, fine. I'm worthy of investigating how else I can be supportive, as opposed to that mindset of like, I just threw however many dollars away.
Yeah. And it's also this place where you're trying to figure out something from the outside. Like, I think we do that a lot. I think our inner critics do that a lot. They will keep us on the outskirts of something where it is safe. Because, like I've learned through you, Tosca, like the inner critical, is trying to keep you safe. It's trying to, save face, or, not take a big risk. And so we, from the outside looking in, make a whole heap of decisions, which are either true or not true, but we're making them from the outside, not the inside, So I always say to people who are interested, I say it's always open to come to an event and see it from the inside, because I'm not going to be the person who is going to convince you that we are the community for you. I don't know what you need. I don't know exactly how this is going to feel for you. We're all amazingly, exquisitely unique.
Right.
I know that we have a really open, diverse, amazing community that does celebrate when people join us, but I'm not going to speak for everybody on the outside looking in.
Right.
I can't.
Yeah.
But I do. I welcome everybody. Follow your curiosity. Come to an event. Just sit and be with us and then feel it from the inside. Follow your curiosity from the inside rather than making decisions from the outside.
Yeah, that's why I love you so much, right? Because you don't sit there and say, I know what's best for you. You say, like, find out for yourself. I mean, obviously you're an intuitive guide, you're a spiritual guide to help people find their own path. And so keeping the door open, I know, is a big part of what you do. And what this makes me, where I want to go with this too is, like, you see how people get in their own way. You see how they get in their own way of grief recovery, of the big life that you can see is possible for them. You see in the circles themselves when people are beating themselves up, and now, right, that you have a real strong sense of what inner critic work is. I'm curious your take on the role that community can have and maybe has had, that you've seen, in terms of people shifting their relationship with their inner critic and accessing their inner cheerleader. I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Yes, please. I mean, it's that thing of, like I was saying before, with the extremes of, like, I'm not the only one, plus also the inspiration of something new and different. But it's also this. And this I see in the community again and again. And when this happens, it's a absolutely delightful moment for me as the founder of this community. It's when another woman is reflecting to another woman in the community what they see in them. We don't see ourselves clearly because we see ourselves through the filters of our experiences and whether they worked out or not, through our memories, through our inner critic, through our imposter. Like, there's so many lenses that are in our way or in our sight of seeing who we are. But there's so many amazing moments when a woman will unmute in the Zoom room in one of our magic circles and literally share with another woman, wow, I've seen you shift from this to this. Or, wow, what I really see in you is that you bring this forward in the group. And it's amazing that the woman has felt like really comfortable and ready to say, I'm just going to say this out loud because this other person really needs to hear it. But the magic is in the receiving. Like, when these moments happen in the Zoom room, I make sure I am looking at the person who is not speaking. I am looking at the person who is receiving. And I want to look at what is happening in their face. Are their shoulders relaxing? Is their sense of self opening up? Because this is also something I do in my work, because I'm an intuitive guide. I'm watching, like, how the muscles of the face are moving in response to things, what's happening in the posture, etc. And, like, what feels like it's happening in the spirit of the person. And it's amazing when you can see somebody receive themselves in a way that maybe they haven't seen themselves, and then what that changes. Like, there's one example I can think of where it was beginning to be reflected back to a particular woman about how big her heart is and how courageous she's been, and the recognition of her journey. And then it's not immediate, but then months later, you start to see that this woman is speaking out more as a place of authority, of, like, sharing with others, this is possible for you too. Like, it's an amazing transformation. I don't even know if it's conscious for the community members. I mean, I'm super curious about this kind of stuff and the intricate moments of transformation. And because I'm connected to every community member, I can see that these things shifting. But your inner cheerleader, I think, is activated when that cheerleader is also not inside you, but around you.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. I could friggin' agree more, because when we are having when we're hard on ourselves, when we have this pattern, like, guilty as charged, right? For so much of my life, and continuing, right? The work never ends. But when we are just so used to that patterning and the way that we talk about ourselves, the way that we see ourselves, and like you said, it's very hard to see our own transformation and our own growth. And that sometimes we need the external to show, to put up the mirror so that we can then internalize it and believe it for ourselves. And I completely agree with you that yes, inner critic work is inner work, but it doesn't have to be independent work. And
Yeah.
and that we need so much uplifting as women, and as anybody in society that has been marginalized or to made to feel less than, that we need the uplift. And it is so much harder to do on your own than to be in community with others who are willing and able to do so, because they're not intimidated by your light. They're not jealous of you shining bright, because everybody can win. There is no winners and losers in a community mindset, in a we mindset, dare I say the Aquarius mindset,
Yeah.
to pull a card from
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
book, right? And I appreciate your observations, because I think the thing that I'm always talking about, right? Like, this is the hardest work of our life. This work of becoming our own best friend, this work of getting out of our own way to live our biggest dreams. And we don't have to do it alone, which is the main reason why I wanted you on this show, to talk about what does it mean to not do life alone, because there's all this, there's these quick little, Instagram, copy, you don't have to do life alone. What does it really freaking mean?
What does it actually really mean?
What does it really mean? And that's
Yeah.
why I love the depth of this, because I remember I was literally in a therapy session. This was many years ago. And and I was in therapy with my husband. We were doing it together. And I literally had this moment. It was the end of a session. And I was like, see, this is it. Like that I have to do life by myself. This is what it is. And I'm sitting here married, right? But I'm just saying, like, that's how deeply ingrained my belief that if that what I want in my life, I am wholly responsible for. And it's such a lie. And it's the pattern that I've had to break, to say, right, no, I'm not alone. And I can break this pattern of feeling like there's nowhere for me to go. And I want that for you who's listening. I want that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that is a core part of our community, the Big Life Magic Makers, is when we gather together, we do what I call calling in the circle. And this is absolutely intentional by me. So what that means is every single person who is gathered has the opportunity to say their name, where they're zooming in from or where they're gathering from, and then they reply to a prompt that whoever is holding the circle gives. And the reason that I chose to do that right from the beginning, and it happens in every single circle that we gather in, is because every single person is seen, heard, and accounted for. So that even if that's the only thing they say for the whole gathering, like, hi, my name is Deb, I'm zooming in from Tobago, and today I feel really da-da-da, whatever it might be. If that's the only thing that they say, they are still present. Their voice has been heard. They have been invited forward. And that, even if I'm holding a circle or it's a guest speaker or one of our community members, that happens every single time, because it lays the energetic framework, it lays this scaffolding of, we all have a voice here. I am a part of this. This is not just something I'm turning up to and I get to sit in the back row. No, I am in the circle. I am visible.
Yeah.
And it's so simple.
Yeah.
But what it means for each individual is not simple. It means every single time you turn up, I don't care if you've had the best day ever and you want to tell us about the amazing thing that happened, or if you spend the whole time wanting to just cry because the day's been really hard, we will take you exactly as you are, but everybody is invited.
And what I love about that, well, I love everything about how you hold circles, but what I love is that the individual says, I'm showing up for myself,
Yes.
right? I'm present.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not they realize that's what's happening and that's what you're encouraging, but that is the win for the day. And that can be the only win for your day, and like celebrate it, like
Yeah.
that it may not be a place where you're the super active participant, or you're expressing yourself, but that you can show up and you can receive, right, from the inspiration you receive from others. And maybe eventually, right, you come out of the shell and there's, I think that there's probably like this kind of goal, which is like, then how do you also get to give and contribute? I think that's what you develop, is like this reciprocity, the flow of life of giving and receiving, but that it's okay. Especially in the corporate world where, it's like if you're not contributing, if you're not speaking up, if you're not adding, then what value are you? This is like the opposite of that. You're worthy and you're valuable just showing up for yourself today.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're worthy and valuable in exactly how you are today.
Right.
Because I think there's definitely some places in my past where it's been like, if I'm not in my sparkly best self, maybe I'm not allowed there.
Right.
Rather than just completely accepting me. It's like, no, accepting me because I give this to the community or I serve that function, rather than it actually being about me.
And, it's just a peek under the tent here, y'all, because y'all know, right? I'm all about constantly evolving and transforming myself. And I get surprised. I've gotten surprised, certainly in your circle and in some experiences right outside of that, previously, where there is something for me, and I don't know how to explain it, Deb. Maybe you have some magical explanation, but I will show up and out of effing nowhere, it's waterworks, it's ugly cry, and that's the beauty of. Here's how I see it. Because like I want to show up shiny and bright and, my light and inspiring other people. Obviously, I'd love to show up in every space that way. But sometimes I show up and I'm a hot friggin' mess. And the way that I've come to understand it, and I'd love to hear your perspective, is that I've found a space that feels so safe for me to self-express without judgment, without anybody having to fix me, without anybody, pitying me. I could just be in my own muck, but being held with it. And there's something real healing about that, which is hard to explain, I think, because it's release, right? For me, it's like I show up and I just like blah, and it's release. And then sometimes I have an emotional hangover where I feel like embarrassed, right? I did the thing, but that's part of the process, I think, for me, right? Which is just allowing myself, giving myself permission to be witnessed by others in my muck and know that it's okay and that I'm still worthy of love and, being held. So, I want to share that because the transformation process, we don't know what it's going to look like. And there's no, right. This is why I say to my clients, like, I don't have a 12-step process I pull off the shelf and like, here's what it is for you. It looks different for everybody. And I'm just being real honest about this is part of my process, which is just like, sometimes I just show up and things show up for me that need to be released that I wasn't expecting. And we're not in control of the process. We just have to allow it.
Mm. I'm so glad that you brought this up, because there is something that I don't think is obvious that I want to share. There's so much to be considered if you are the leader of a community, or if you are the founder, or if you're in the organizing committee. Like, for example, I've already shared one, which is just like, how do we begin? How do we ensure everyone is welcomed and feels like they belong here? You can do that in whatever way that you want. But I think that that's important, like how like, let's begin as we wish to continue, right? So there's that. But there's also, when people join the Big Life Magic Makers, I mean, you may not remember because you've been in the community since the doors opened in February 2022. Everyone gets the magic agreements, which are, this is, as a community, what we all agree. And one of those agreements is we don't try to fix or heal anybody. We leave people to their own experience. If we have something we want to share, we ask permission first. Tosca, would you like to hear this from me? Which means now, because like any new member who comes, they get those magic agreements. They get the fancy designed PDF. And there's only 5 of them. It's not like there's a whole heap of rules, but it was important for me to understand, what am I inviting people into? And how are we going to be together? And that's the leading energy. The person who is the founder or started the group, or, is the person who gathers the people together once a week, or however the community operates, you are the leading energy. So how you lead, how you create this space, how you let other people know where the boundary is, where the line is, what's allowed, how we operate, all of that is deeply important to what then happens inside that community. Because of the way the Big Life Magic Makers is set up, where we're all seen and heard. You can come exactly as you are. We don't try to fix or heal anybody else. Everyone's diverse experience is valid. It means that you can turn up, and even if you're not aware of it, you can get an emotional release when you need it, because that has become for you as a known safe space. And also as the leading energy of that community, you said it right from the beginning of the podcast, I am heart-led, which means if I'm the leading energy of this community, I'm inviting everyone to bring their hearts, because I bring mine. And that's never, like, it's not written in the agreements. It's not what I say when I open up circles, but that's what I know I'm doing when I'm opening up these circles. It's like, I'm going to stay. So the things that I'm really anchored into, Tosca, for the Big Life Magic Makers, is I always tell the truth. I am a spiritual teacher. I've been working in spiritual practice for, 30 years now. I know a lot of stuff, and I'm still figuring it out. I share the stories of things that aren't working for me, or the time that I sabotage my own transformation, or where I'm trying to figure out a tricky relationship, as well as the stories of like, hey, I figured out this new thing. Here's a new activation. Let's play with this in the community. I'm sharing that too. Me being honest is one of the leading energies that I have chosen to commit to. Me being focused on, it's actually how we feel, not what we think, is another leading energy. And then the other is just accepting everyone exactly as they are, and who they are in this moment, in this breath, which means I have to do that for myself, which is why sometimes, I've opened up circles and I'll say to the group, like I said this just the last circle that we ran, I was like, today I had to take an extended nap in the afternoon because I wanted to turn up for this community in the best energy possible, and I was not having a good day. And so I canceled the calendar for the afternoon, and I did. I literally took a nap and I said some prayers, and I allowed myself to lay in the bed, and I allowed myself to feel sorry for myself in the little moment, and then snooze and then wake up, because my intention is so clear. I turn up honest, heart-led, and in the best possible energy that I can, because I am the leading energy of this community.
I'm having a very proud friend moment right now. I'm like, hey, y'all, this is my friend Deb Z. I'm just so happy for you to meet her. I love it. I love it because you walk the talk, you embody the work, right? And I operate in the same way. And I think it's so important as part of how we determine the places and spaces and the solutions for us is looking at these types of things to say, do you walk the talk? How have you come to this place? What really is your experience? Because we have a lot of people out there doing stuff that, it's a real thin ice that they're building something off of.
Yeah.
And that's really scary. And especially in the coaching spaces, in the spiritual spaces, all that stuff. And it's also reminding me, your story is also reminding me, I think of one of like maybe the first or second time I talked to you, maybe not the first, maybe the second time we had like one-on-one. And I remember being really emotional. I'm like, what is happening here? I don't know what. I'm someone that just doesn't cry with other people usually. I mean, you know, at that time in my life. And you were like, yeah, I know this is normal. This is what people do. With
This is
me,
just what happens.
no,
Yeah.
it's
It
like,
does. It does.
it is.
Yeah.
It's so effing true.
Yeah.
And because of who you are and because you lead with your heart and all the work, like you said, that you do is heart work. Gosh, how amazing would the world be if we just all moved 1% in the direction of heart work?
Yes, absolutely. And we are. I think we
Yeah.
are. We're having this conversation now, and someone's listening and being like, wow, I've been in my head for the last 20 years.
Right.
Maybe I should check in with my heart. Yes, please.
Yeah.
My favorite question to ask a friend or a family member or anybody, instead of asking, how are you, ask them, how's your heart? Just go to the heart of the matter.
I learned to ask that question, especially with people grieving from you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
It also, I'm sorry, I have to ask this question because
Mm.
I'm like, so when are you going to start teaching like facilitations? Because I just feel like this is an offering, or maybe you already offer it. I don't really know.
No, like that's, I have like you shared, in some ways I am teaching it
Yeah.
within the community. And in Red Thread Stories in Australia, when I had this consultancy with these two other women, teaching facilitation and how to hold space was one of the things that we did.
I'm just saying, if you get a phone call or an email about this from this podcast, don't be surprised.
Oh, look, I welcome it because I also do welcome the idea that we don't all naturally know how to hold space.
Right.
I didn't even realize I knew how to hold space until it was reflected back to me. And it was in the early, we all remember it so well, days of 2020 pandemic. One of the things I did in those early months is I held circles for people to be able to talk about what was happening. And the reason I held those circles for different like networking groups, communities, organizations, the reason people were reaching out to me is because they said that one line, you know how to hold space. We trust that you can hold this space. And I was like, oh, I guess I can hold space because everyone's telling me that I can. But I had just naturally been doing it because of being the kid, being the theatre practitioner, et cetera, because of who I am. And then also because of the grief work that I have done, where I've processed my own deep grief, supported other people to do that. I also know what it means to hold space that doesn't feel emotionally anchored. It can feel broken or hurt or scary, But then inside the Big Life Magic Makers, one of the things that we do is the community are invited to step forward and either hold a full moon gathering or bring their skills and talents forward. And one of the things that I do is I meet with those magic makers, those women, before they teach, and I let them know, we always make sure we call in the circle. We always make sure we close the circle, and I support them in like, what do you want to share? What's your plan? And it's really, it's tender for some people because people are really nervous about leading.
Yeah.
But even when they're a really valued, loved member of the community. And for some people, it's because they want to do the best job ever. For some people, because they've never actually been supported in how do I lead and hold space? It's not something that's natural or intuitive for everybody. And so I do love that element of being able to work with the women because, I always meet with them afterwards and say, when were you having the most fun? Like what did you really enjoy?
When they jump over when they take the leap, and they do the thing that was scary for them, they freaking love it, right? It's empowering, all the things. And for you listening, if your heart skipped a beat, if you're like, gosh, I would love to do that, like pay attention because we need people in the world that are willing to help folks gather and to do it well and to create spaces. I think part of where we are in society is because of competitiveness, because of scarcity mindset, because of fear and our inner critics telling us, who are we to gather the people? Nobody will show up, or who will want to do this thing, right? All that. So I hope that one of the things you get out of this conversation today is, maybe the whisper in my life right now is to raise my hand. It's raising my hand to join a community and seeing what else is possible. Maybe it's raising my hand and saying, I actually want to lead and hold some space. I think I might be good at it. Or maybe it's even, I want to raise my hand and address my inner critics and finally do this work of being my own best friend. But I feel like there has been so much richness about today. Just that we've gone in so many different corners of transformation that my hope is that if you heard the whisper today, you don't forget it. You lean into it and you take a micro action towards that, answering that whisper, because a whisper, it ain't going to go away until you pick up the phone, you take the step, Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I feel there's so much other stuff we could talk about, but I want to respect your time, and I guess I just want to pause and ask, like, was there something else that you feel like important to say that hasn't been shared as it relates to community, perhaps even inner critics and community? Like, what do you want people to know that maybe we haven't talked about?
This is something that's kind of recent, like in terms of like months old for me, but it was a real kind of like, oh, moment. And this relates to the Big Life Magic Makers, but I want to open it up to be universal around communities for people, especially when they're thinking about joining a community. So in the Big Life Magic Makers, we come together for spiritual practice, to have a scaffolding around our spiritual practice. We meet at the moon. We talk about our intuition, But what I realized months ago through the women in the community is it's not about the magic. It's about the women being together and that value of being together and being seen. And then I hear from the women, like, what's the value that you get? What's the benefit of being in the community? Because I just recently did some member interviews, which was so insightful and delightful. And they, people didn't say like, oh, like I'm really attuned with the moon now. People didn't say that. What they're saying is, I've learned to trust myself. I never really got that self-love thing. Now I get it. I'm moving in that direction. So it's actually about the women. It's about the people, not what we do, not what I'm teaching. And I think for everybody who's hearing that whisper of like, oh, maybe I want to start a community, or maybe I want to join a community. Maybe it's not about the books that the book club is reading. Maybe it's not about the bike rides that the bike community is taking. Maybe it's about you and you connecting with other humans in a really positive way, because then what happens is you get that positivity developed within you, whether it's trust or self-love or believing that you can actually get what you're going for, whatever it might be. It's actually about the people. Communities really are about people connecting. And the desire is that those people connect in positive ways for the community as a whole, but then for those individuals with what they need.
Amen. Amen to that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, for sharing more about what your community is all about. What is I'll put the ways people can connect with you in the show notes, but just for right now, who wants to kind of find you right away, what's the best way to find you and learn more about what you have to offer?
Like biglifemagic.com is, the multiverse. That's where you can find out more about the community, find out more about me. You could even, I want to invite this. If anyone is interested in Big Life Magic Makers, reach out to me. I'll tell you when the next few events are. You can align your calendar and come. Like, check us out from the inside. That's what I always say. The door is open. So for any woman who's listening and being like, I actually want a community of supportive women, then I invite you. And for anybody listening, if you want to know about holding space, if you want to know about intentional communities, if you want to know anything about me, then feel free to reach out. We can make some time.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Yes, yes. You will not be disappointed if you do. I mean, oh my goodness, please do. Deb is such a beautiful soul to have in your sphere, in your orbit, in your
Hmm.
world. So, if you feel pulled and called to further explore, um, I couldn't recommend a better person to be connected with. So,
Thank you.
thank
I'll
you so
receive. I'll receive.
much. Thank you so much. Thank you for staying with us. This is, one of our deep dive interviews. They're never short. I'm all about long form content. So if you found value from this conversation, please rate, review, like this a podcast on the platform that you're listening to. That would be amazing and a great gift of gratitude back to us. And thank you for joining the Unlock Lab. Thank you for being here. Ciao for now.